It is winning season at MyBookie. Use promo code Gators on a deposit of $50 or more, and you can receive up to $200 in cash instantly to your MyBookie account. Hey, there's not much longer to bet on college football, so join in now. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere at MyBookie.
Gators Breakdown, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC and at Gators Breakdown. Here we are, Monday night edition ahead of Florida State. And joining me tonight, hey, that's not Will Miles. That is Seth Varnadore joining me right here on Gators Breakdown. Will is in Florida. I'll actually see Will in person Saturday for the Florida State game, but he's in the state visiting family. So, we got Seth here, like we have a couple of times this year, and always bringing it. And his latest at gatorsbreakdown.com, basically saying Florida's got to become a winning team, a losing team right now. We'll get into a little bit of that as well. But Seth and I were joking before we came on here that hey, there might be some good news for Florida this weekend, Seth.
There's a couple. I just thought of another. We got a couple of good trends in Florida's favor here. The first one is I also cover USF, so sometimes I'm at a game for USF and can't put my full attention on the Florida game because they're at the same time. And I think Florida's won every game I haven't been able to watch in full, and they've lost everyone I've been able to watch in full. So that might be an issue. And then the other trend I just thought of is I think I came on before the Tennessee game by myself. So undefeated.
Hey, man, we're going to keep the trend going. Kirk and Herbie are calling the game Saturday as well for the Gators. They called the Tennessee game, so hey, there we go. We're just getting all the good mojo going in.
Yeah, can watch that whole game because they're the USF game, so it all lines up.
Yeah, there we go. So there we go. Hey guys, if Florida wins, we're coming back to this. I'm just going to replay it. We're going to come back to this and really. We'll have to figure something out, some combo out to get this cute and keep it going for Florida. But, hey, Seth, thanks for joining me right here. Thanks for everything you've been doing at gatorsbreakdown.com this season as well as the season comes to a close, at least the regular season. Hopefully we get one more bowl game to talk about for the Gators. But thanks for your input there all season long there at gatorsbreakdown.com. Scheming with Seth, the whole series he's been there since the beginning of gatorsbreakdown.com. So, guys, there's a lot more to check out there. Billy Napier's full transcript from today, and also a look into Graham Mertz's season. He will not play the Florida State game. Did a nice little write-up about him, his bounce back from Wisconsin, all the stats he's provided for Florida this year to help this offense take a step. So, good stuff there at gatorsbreakdown.com. And if you want even more, go chat with some Gators Breakdown fans. You can go to Gators Breakdown Plus. Link is in the description. Extra episodes, ad-free episodes. You get the Discord chat. Seth pops in there every now and then as well to talk some scheme stuff there in the football no recruiting channel, of course, because we know how recruiting goes. So a lot of good, just pure football talk out there on Gators Breakdown Plus Discord. Access to all of that. Link is in the description for Gators Breakdown Plus. So just mentioned it, Seth, and let's get into it. Graham Mertz, of course, will not be available for Florida on Saturday versus the Seminoles. As expected, suffering a non-displaced collarbone fracture per Billy Napier. Surgery hasn't been ruled out yet, but there won't be answers on that front for roughly about 2 weeks. And quote, is what Billy Napier had to say today. We took another image yesterday. We felt good about that image. We're basically going into a 2-week period here where we're going to give a chance for the fracture to start the process of growing back, and then we'll reevaluate things. I think in the meantime, we're going to do exhaustive research on like cases in college football and the NFL relative to players that have been through similar injuries, just making sure we're giving him the best map for him going forward with the rest of his career. So Seth, of course, transferring from Wisconsin. We didn't know what type of quarterback we were going to get here at Florida. I had you on in the offseason. We talked to Graham Mertz. Hey, one more trend. You talked about Graham Mertz, Florida, and he comes and does some good things for Florida at the quarterback spots. So, 4 seasons at Wisconsin, starting quarterback for 3 years, 5,000 yards passing there, 38 touchdowns, 26 interceptions, just under 60% completion percentage. We were wondering if he came to Florida, would he be able to get with a run game that would help him out? Would he be able to get to some athletes at receiver that would help him out. Offensive line, well, he's had to overcome an offensive line there. So really good bounce back for him, and it's sad that we won't really get to see him play on Saturday.
Yeah, he's had a really, really good season. I thought he was talented, and that's kind of what we talked about in the offseason. I thought he was talented, but he kind of lacked consistency at Wisconsin. Now, some of that was situations he got put in and maybe some players around him as well. But that was my biggest question coming into the year. Could he be consistent, or could he be a guy that kind of flashes consistency for the first time in his career? And you see the numbers up there. It's hard. It's hard to get better than almost 73% completion percentage, right? So that's pretty consistent. All his numbers are up pretty much across the board from last year, and he's playing, I think, tougher competition. So I think he gave you about everything you could have expected and more. And I think if you would have thrown these stats out before the season and asked everybody what Florida's record was, it would be a lot better than 5-6 right now. So.
Yeah, we'll get into that too because of this defense. I got some conference stats, but yeah, it shows you right there. Mertz production, significant improvement this season at Florida compared to his last year at Wisconsin. That's a comparison you see here if you're watching the YouTube version. But 11 games this year for the Gators, Mertz was 261 for 358, resulting in 72.9%, basically 73% completion percentage. Also averaged 8.1 yards per attempt. Maybe the only bugaboo that you can put there for him is maybe you'd like to see that a little bit higher. But throwing for 20 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. And Seth, that's the big one. You look at interceptions as well. I put too much there on the graphic. He only had 3 interceptions there in 2023. I'll have to fix that. But, yeah, only 3 interceptions there in 2023. I don't know why I put 11 there. I don't know where I got that from.
Your Roman numerals before last game.
Yeah, that's what it was. Only 3 interceptions here this year in 23. But you go back to last year, he had 10 interceptions. 7 less this year and throwing the ball more and a lot less interceptions there. 1 more touchdown this year and 1 less game. And then look, the completion percentage up 57.3% last year, up to 73% this year. Like I said, throwing the ball a bit more, probably would have been around 100 more attempts if he would have played versus Florida State. So Graham Mertz, of course, as I said, and Seth, honestly, for the way it happened too. Of course, it was the hard hit. He was wearing number 15. He looked like Tebow out there for a play, running over guys, and that was the weird part. And of course, I'm sure adrenaline was a big part of it. But talking about that offensive line, how many times this year he's had to show that toughness? How many late hits probably should have been called? How many hits
in that game alone?
And so yeah, it's not just the numbers part of it. He was a good leader, resiliency, shot a lot of toughness too for the Gators.
Yeah, and just talking about the interceptions, really the one on Saturday was the first one all year that's really his fault.
Yeah.
They've all been tipped, but the first 2 were catchable balls. The last was a little high. So, really, he's not thrown very many just even in danger. There's been a few, but like cut way down on those interceptions. But, yeah, he's had to be tough. Now, I wish he'd have gotten better at throwing the ball away a little bit, and that comes back to bite him seemingly once a game. But if he comes back next year, it's something he can look to improve on. But, he definitely showed his toughness because, we went through looking at the bye week or, around the bye week at Arkansas game, trying to look at the sack figures, me and JP Gator in the Discord, and then Bud Davis, friend of the Discord. Mm-hmm. We were kind of looking through the sacks and trying to see who we thought was kind of at fault for a lot of them. And we put like a quarter maybe of them on Mertz, just in terms of getting the ball out of his hands, not throwing it away. But a lot of it was on other guys. So he definitely got beat up this year. And, that's a tough way to get hurt. You could see his body kind of get from both sides. But he gutted it out and got the first down, which was big at that point of the game. So I think Florida scored on that drive, if I recall correctly. So it was a big conversion too. So tough way for his season to end, but man, he's been everything you could have wanted and more.
Yeah, absolutely. So, big. You brought it up too. Maybe coming back next year. We've seen a lot of quarterbacks do that, transfer and stay another year and take another leap. I mean, he took a huge leap in year one from his Wisconsin days. Good point about we could see even more. The things that he can improve on if he does come back. And Billy Napier did mention he's going to let him announce his plans when they would discuss that in the press conference today. So, I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot of NFL, even with the jump up this season. I'm not sure there's a whole lot of NFL love. I mean, maybe you got more on that. I don't know if you're hearing anything from that perspective, but of course, I think it would be a plus if he returns to Florida. We'll see how Max Brown plays Saturday as well, and that might factor into it. DJ Lagway coming in, but I mean, as of now, I would think he'd be back, but I guess it still could be in question.
I would think so too, but I think he's a guy that'll probably do well in a workout setting, throwing the ball. And if he's one thing you heard about him in the offseason after he kind of visited Florida was that this dude is really smart and he's really good on the board. He understands all that kind of stuff. So he might be a guy that interviews well too in the pre-draft process. So I wouldn't be shocked. You kind of had the talent. You were a highly rated recruit, and you got a season. You can maybe feel like I can go out on a high with my values highest, but I could definitely. I would imagine more likely that he would come back and try to take that even higher next year. Especially this is a pretty good quarterback class in terms of the draft. So if he can come back and have a really good year.
Yeah, and maybe the injury plays a part too. If he doesn't feel like he can work out, if you're saying he's a good, maybe could work out well. If that workout is hampered at all, then it may be best.
Don't want to do it. Yeah, can't put your best foot forward. He's a guy. I mean, he's a guy that probably would, and with injury probably takes that away, but would benefit from, if he has another good year, going to a Senior Bowl type game, having a good week of practice, getting around a coaching staff, because he seems to. Everything we've heard about him is that. His teammates love him. His coaches love him. You saw that, like you described, he's been tough all year, a good leader. So that's one of those games where you get around an NFL coaching staff for a week. It's probably helpful. So, the injury, maybe he wants to just run it back and he can maybe lift his stock a little bit more and then get those kind of postseason opportunities and take advantage of them.
Well, now, Seth, it's time to turn the page a bit, and it is the battle of backups on Saturday. Jordan Travis out for Florida State, of course, so Tate Rodemaker leading the charge to them. But, of course, for Florida, we saw it Saturday night there in Missouri. Max Brown plays pretty well in his first meaningful action there for the Gators. And, look, going 4 of 5, 56 yards, had a long of 27, 5 games this season, 10 of 12, 106 yards, but nothing really meaningful until this last game versus Missouri, of course. Go back, Seth, Oklahoma District 3A MVP as a senior, threw for 27, 50 yards, 41 passing touchdowns, about 1,300 rushing yards with 20 rushing touchdowns at Lincoln Christian in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And in 2 seasons there, accumulated 4,416 passing yards, 68 passing touchdowns. So has some legs, has some ability. We saw that on display Saturday night, but, of course, can throw the ball as well. And, of course, now against one of the pretty good defense here in FSU, especially up front. And we'll see what that means there. But here's Billy Napier on Max Brown from today.
I think Max kind of did what I thought he would do. I think Max is a competitor. He's got a level of belief in himself. He's always been a very confident guy. For the most part, I think we had the one ball exchange, the ball handling issue. Outside of that, he did what he was supposed to do, and I think we changed gears a little bit there to try to help him out. And I think critical 4th down throw, into a tight window, and then he threw a nice ball outside on the double move. So, first play's in there, he throws a strike to Ricky on the naked. So, he did a lot of good things. He's been working hard since the first day he's gotten here. He's improved. And I'll tell you, I think the players he's got good connection and camaraderie with the players. So I think they see him every day. They know who he is and what he's capable of. I think, ultimately, we just have to play a brand of football that relative to Max and his experience, what he knows, and what he's got confident in, right? And I think we still got to feature the players that we know are important each week. But ultimately, every offense that I've ever been a part of starts with what the quarterback can do well, right? So that'll be part of the plan.
Seth, we're going to come full circle here because I remember preseason you wrote an article about how much this Florida offense would change with Graham Mertz leading the way, away from a mobile quarterback, somebody like Anthony Richardson, and now you get those legs back. You get that athleticism back a bit now with Brown taking over. Now, look, there's not a lot of tape on him, and the most tape that we probably have from this past weekend would be the zone replays, read option, him, having the keepers, and of course that's going to be part of this offense now. And we saw it in that game against Missouri. It did open up the middle of that run game and allow Johnson and Etienne to get some big chunk yardage. So that comes back around to something that you wrote before the season, how much this offense was going to change without that at the quarterback spot. Well, now Florida has it back. How much of an advantage is it then? Of course, I think it's still an element of surprise, but through the passing game, there's not a lot there, I guess, for FSU to study. But at the same time, he's going to go out there and have to prove it to pass the ball, especially with now most of it being on tape of him being a running quarterback.
Yeah, I would guess you're going to see a lot of play action. He's an athletic guy. He's got a smooth stroke throwing the ball. You saw him. They rolled him out twice off play action. I think they wanted to do it a third time, and the exchange got fumbled, unfortunately. But both times he made positive plays, completed one pass, and then was able to get yardage. So that'll probably be a big part of it. I think the run game, the read game will definitely be a part of it as well. They did a little bit of what people call modern triple option now, where you have a receiver or a tight end run to the flat, and then you're running your read option. So if he pulls it, I can throw it out wide now if I get a safety or somebody screwing down. So I'm sure you'll see some of that. But I think just the threat of him running helps in the run game. That's kind of what the big thing before the season was, that you don't have a way to control the backside, or you didn't as much this year without Richardson. Now, they're not going to pay him as much attention as they did Anthony Richardson, but I'd imagine you'll get – even Missouri, you saw just a little bit slow. The backers may be a little bit slow to fold back inside. They stay a step wider for a second longer, and then you crease them up inside. So – and I think that's something that you're probably going to need against the Florida State team that's got pretty good pass rushers. And if you can't, one way to neutralize good pass rushers is to run the ball at them. So you may see a little bit of that, but I would think it's going to look not too dissimilar. I think the run game will probably be the biggest change, and you probably hope to not get in a ton of drop back situations. But I think, and it's something we talked about earlier this year, the passing game is built on certain concepts that they rep a lot in a bunch of different ways. So he's probably practiced the stuff they're running already a ton since he's been on campus. So it shouldn't be anything crazy new, but you kind of want to limit probably his dropbacks against some pretty good edge rushers, especially if you're going to be down 2 tackles. So I'm sure that's part of the game plan to maybe limit those dropbacks, but probably a lot of play action, a lot of him in the run game. And you can't really worry about injury because you need to win. So you got to kind of cut it loose.
Yeah, it's a conversation I was having today with some friends too about this game. First of all, how much of the playbook does he know? Now, this is his second year. You hope he knows a whole lot of it because, look, we've seen it lately. Billy Napier can dial up some first drives. But with a young quarterback like Max Brown, I'm sure this second drive will be pretty designed. They'll be pretty scripted. But after that, how much of the playbook can they give him when they need a score, when they got to go score, when they got to keep up maybe? Can they expand the playbook, or is it just a few select plays? It is the second season. He should know the offense pretty well, but it's a whole lot different when you got to go out there and perform it. But as far as knowledge goes, you hope that he has a pretty good grasp of the playbook here, and now you can expand it a little bit with his legs. Yeah,
I wonder if you see less of, him in charge of protection, him in charge of making checks. It might be where this game, it's a little bit more on Napier to just, hey, I got to call the play. I can't rely on him to make a perfect check every time. And you even saw Mertz kind of fall into that, where he's trying to make the perfect check too often.
Yeah.
And it get to delay games and things like that. But so it may be more of, hey, we're just going to run with it. And, hey, this is the play call, just run it. So you may see less of that. I would imagine the shifting and motion stays because it kind of stayed in when he got in against Missouri. They didn't change too much. So I don't think you're going to see big widespread changes. But maybe, like I said, maybe less drop back. I would wonder if you see more screen against Florida State, make their corners and those guys tackle instead of worrying about these guys rushing the passer. Just get the ball out of your hands and then run downhill. You had success last year running right at them.
Yeah.
And it seems like they're starting to round into form a little bit up front in terms of the run game. So I'm sure you'll see a good bit of that, but the areas where I think is going to be a lot less than typical is kind of making those checks at the line, making protection calls, changing that. That's probably going to be a lot more on Billy than it has been this season. And
maybe Slaughter too at center. And Kingsley's been out, and now he's been really good at that part of it. Now he has struggled physically to play the game this year. But his knowledge of the offense should be there as well. So both your centers may help out at the same time. But and do wonder if Austin Barber's going to be back this week too as a tackle. But of course, Florida dealing with the injuries there, like you said. But man, such an interesting storyline here now with this quarterback spot.
Yeah, just when you thought like you obviously aren't happy for it, but. Just when you thought you're going to catch a pretty big break against Florida State, where them not being able to play their starting quarterback, you lose yours in the same week. So, FSU's been on a run of playing a lot of backups or quarterbacks this year. So, I wonder how good the defense really is. I don't know, but we'll see. Interesting note on Tate Rodemaker. He was committed to USF, and the coach he committed to, Kerwin Bell.
Yeah. Your little connection there.
Long time commitment to Kerwin. When Kerwin left, he left. So
I gotta remember Rodemaker. I gotta say that last name right.
Yeah.
So
Dad's a big time coach in Valdosta, I believe.
Yeah, Napier said he knew him. They knew each other or his dad knew Rodemaker's dad. So there was a connection there. So I do wonder how much that'll come up in Gainesville. But Napier already talking about it today. But on Saturday, I wonder if the Rodemakers will be in attendance there for hopefully watching a loss. So.
Yeah, I bet they'll make the trip down. I'd imagine.
Yeah, I would imagine so. But all right, plenty more. We'll get into a little bit of this Gator team this year in conference play, and kind of expand on something Seth wrote for gatorsbreakdown.com as well that I released this morning about kind of how close Florida is to being a winning team, but right now they are a losing team. So. Before we get there, hey, when your money's on the line, choose a trusted sports book that gives you the tools to win like MyBookie. And there's action for new and existing customers. It's Thanksgiving week, so there's a lot of action for you and a lot of action on the gridiron with the NFL and rivalry week in college football. Make this week even more exciting by betting at MyBookie. Use MyBookie for daily odds boost, same game parlays, and take advantage of huge prize pool contests. Plus, MyBookie has a no strings attached cash bonus that lets you deposit and withdraw quick. Just use promo code Gators in your first deposit and receive up to $200 in cash. That's promo code Gators to claim your own cash bonus now. Existing customers get up to 50% in a bonus reload. So bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie. Seth, Billy Napier was asked today, hey, you guys, a game-winning kick away against Arkansas, and a 4th and 17 stop away from being 7-4. Do you think this team is better than its record right now?
I think we're a team that can be competitive with about anybody, if that makes sense. We're capable of beating anybody, and anybody's capable of beating us, if that makes sense. I mean, I think that's kind of who we are. I think our struggles have been inconsistency. We're yet to put it together, a dominant performance in all three parts of our team. Some of that is injuries, lack of depth, youth. I mean, we're not going to allow, we're not going to allow excuses to creep into what we're trying to accomplish, if that makes sense. We're trying to improve. We're trying to get the most out of our players, right? And I think it's a fun team to coach because we got some veteran players that are just awesome in their approach, attitude, leadership. They've maintained energy, the work ethic, the practice habits. And then we got a lot of guys that don't know any different, right? I mean, we got a lot of young cats that are just showing up, and it's like, what's next? So, and I think there's some things about that you respect. So, look, we are what our record indicates. We've come up short, in a handful of games. So, and we can coach better and play better. That's what I think about. I think I'm thinking about things we can do.
So Seth, Billy Napier was also discussing, look, there's 12 to 15 plays in a game. I think that impacted the end result, he says. When you lose these games by these point totals, it's all magnified. So every possession counts. We're talking about 12 possessions a game on average, both sides of the ball. I think each one of those where you don't maybe gets the result you want, there's something in that possession you can point to that you can do better. That's where we're at as a program. Every time we put the ball down, no matter who the opponent is, that margin for error that you're talking about, I think that's who we are. That's where we're at. Every play counts. Every possession counts. Yeah, this margin for error for this team is very, very thin. We've seen it on, in full circle 2 out of the last 3 games for sure with Arkansas and Missouri. And kind of goes back to something you said, Seth, when we're talking about just so many plays that are so game-changing for Florida that are resulting in losses, it's there for a win as well. And I'll just read the beginning of because it kind of goes to what Napier said today. The beginning of your article, Florida is a losing football team. They have a chance to get back to even in the backup bowl this week. But as of now, it's true. And it's not just true for this season, but also Billy Napier's tenure as a whole. Beyond experience and talent level, which basically Napier was talking about there, the biggest difference between losing teams and winning teams is that winning teams make plays.
Yeah. Winning plays aren't necessarily the big explosive plays. It's just the winning teams, they do the little things correctly. I think the one a lot of people are pointing to, and I think it even got mentioned today in his press conferences, as simple as, Etienne running out of bounds instead of just falling to his knees and gaining 0 yards. You're either getting the timeout from Missouri or you're getting 40 seconds off the clock. So those are the kinds of things. If you want to make that leap, those are the plays, and those are kind of routine. And like he said, he knows he should not have done that. And I'm sure they practice it. I put a story in there. My first year of coaching, the guy I coached for is really meticulous. We practice every single situation every week. We spent a lot of time on it. The kids would groan and suck their teeth, but we're like, hey, this is important. And one of them was 4-minute offense running out the clock. And, it was, make the ref ask you twice to get up off the ground, make him ask for the football twice. If you toss it to him, toss it at his feet. So he has to bend over and get it and the clock doesn't start. He doesn't wind the clock. But most important is keep 2 hands on the ball. We're going against the clock. We don't need yards. We need time off the clock. We're playing a district game. Kid tries to fight for a couple more yards. He fumbles. They go down and score. We end up getting a touchdown right at the very end of the game, kind of lucked out. But then the very next week, we're in the same situation. He kept 2 hands on the ball, and we were able to run out the clock. So, unfortunately, failure is a really good teacher. And sometimes it sticks with you more than the 10 minutes you put in every, Friday in your walk through practice. Seeing that field goal go through when maybe they wouldn't have got a chance to get there. That'll probably stick in your head a little bit more than, coach at practice just telling you, hey, make sure you get down. Make sure you just fall to your knees right here. So it's unfortunate, but that's how it goes sometimes. And that's the tough part, especially when, like he said, the margins are thin, and the margins are thin for just think about you're the head coach, man, and you've been banging that drum every week and the guy doesn't do it. And you get fired. Like that happens every year in college football, and it's tough, but that's why they get paid big money. So,
Seth, from a coaching perspective, 2 areas I want to go to, and maybe you could dive in. You dove in a little bit on the article. I'll go in sequential order, and I put this tweet out about an hour before we came live here, and it's been ballyhooed and talked about a whole lot. Was Billy Napier too conservative at the end of the game? And that's the ETN where he runs out of bounds and the clock has to stop. But, Florida's in scoring position. They're in field goal range, and they're running the ball really well at that point. That's why I don't consider it conservative. Billy Napier is a run-first coach by nature. The run game was working. And he called 3 straight runs. The third down inexplicably does go out of bounds. That hurts more than anything, and that kind of just blew the whole plan up anyway. But
I think if
you pass on first down, do you pass on second down, or do you?
I thought maybe on third down you could, but if you told him, "Hey, your running back's going to run out of bounds," he would have thrown on. He would have, right? Like I think it's a lot easier to look back on that and say, "Oh, he's too conservative. He should have thrown." It's like 40 seconds off that clock, or Mizzou burning that. If Missouri burns that timeout, they don't get it. They were scrambling before that 4th and 17.
Yeah.
Called a timeout. Were able to compose themselves, get into a good play. If they don't have that timeout, they probably don't convert, right?
And not only that, Seth, they probably can't throw it to the middle of the field.
Yeah. So, like, it compounds. That issue kind of compounds things. So, yeah, I think if you told him, your running back's going to run out of bounds if you run the ball. He may have thrown it, or he may have just. I mean, he might have just told Max take a knee. Just take a knee.
But that's another part. Florida's running the ball well, and you have a young quarterback, so you're going to ask him to make the right decision. Maybe throw a pick, and you don't get the field goal at all.
And with the way your kicker's been kicking for most of the year, you feel like you're pretty much guaranteed to take the lead there if you kick a field goal. So you're gonna put in a hostile environment against a guy that will bring exotic pressures on third downs.
and they had trouble blocking. So who's to say Brown doesn't get hit and ball fumbles? And don't get me wrong,
you take a sack and you're out of field goal. It's funny. The people I was kind of talking to during the game. I said, you know how scarred Florida fans are, because we were all kind of talking amongst ourselves, and most of the people were saying, just run the clock out and kick a field goal with no time left. That's the goal. We don't. So when he broke out and it looked like he may have had a chance to score, everyone was kind of like, get down, down. Like you'd rather, because you knew any time on the clock you had a chance to lose the game. So it's kind of I don't think it was about being aggressive. I thought he played it pretty smart, but the back going out of bounds kind of takes all that out of your hands a little bit and makes it look a little bit less smart, but you'd have to anticipate he's not going to do that. So,
yeah. And look, I'm sure it was even talked about. Hey, you can't go out of bounds, but in the heat of the moment,
yes. Like I said, I'm sure they've drilled this one day every week of practice for a portion of practice. They probably drill this just like they drill 2-minute. They drill the other side of it. So I guarantee they've gone over this probably 100 times since that guy's been on campus. And like you said, heat of the moment, sometimes it just happens, especially a guy that's had some injury history, this year, and maybe doesn't want to take a shot, on like if he's got a shoulder, he maybe not want to take a shot on the shoulder, just instinct. And that's just a kind of bad luck and unfortunate. So,
and then the next one, and hey, I had the Discord up, and JP Gator just puts it up right now. I mean, literally, I don't even think he's watching, but hey, timing just works out. But Billy Napier's quote on the 4th and 17. That's I was going to go in there next to you. You detailed it a little bit in the article, but here's Napier's explanation of it. We've just got to do a little bit better job in the hook areas of the field, Napier said on the 4th and 17 completion. That's area where receiver runs to the mark and hooks around for a pass. Rush was also not good enough on that play, says Napier. So that was in response to me putting in the Discord, Seth, that maybe nunnery should drop a little bit deeper. And that was the response, JP Gator quoted and put in there. So Does that go hand in hand with maybe we should have done a little bit better job in the hook areas of the field? I mean, of course, you're at the sticks. It's Nunnery's the linebacker. It goes over his head, and there's 2 DBs behind him. Burden still jogs in between them. What is Billy Napier saying there by saying maybe we got to do a little bit better job in the hook areas of the field?
Yeah, so they were, and he didn't answer exactly what they were running, but he did after the game. You heard him say we were in a weak rotation, and it was a weak rotation cover 3. So the safety from the weak side rotates down into, he's probably a curl flat player, and it looks like they might have had both the linebackers playing the hooks. I think it was anticipating a crossing route because as the safety rotates down, number 3 crosses right where he is, and he picks him up, takes that out. So then the linebacker, if he's the hook player and it's 3rd and 17, I can get depth. He had nothing in front of him. So, maybe if he's supposed to drop, so hook kind of between the hash, curl flat is kind of hash and then closer to the sideline, right? 5-6 yards to the sideline, curl maybe closer to the hash. Inside the hashes is kind of that hook area. Mm-hmm. And so if I just drop straight back in my hook area to 20 yards, I'm probably getting the ball thrown to me if I'm Nunnery, right? And so after the third receiver crosses the formation, that safety takes him. You've got 4 defenders on 2 receivers. I think you had Jaden Hill kind of stay outside a little bit because they run a ton of corner routes, and they actually got Florida on that last year on a 3rd and 18 or 3rd and 19, or maybe even it was like a 3rd and 17. They ran basically a flood route. So anticipating that, you had 4 guys covering 2 guys, and I think one of your guys just didn't get enough depth. He probably was playing it like it was 3rd and 10. He's got to realize, hey, it's 3rd and 17.
4th and 17.
Yeah, 4th and 17. I got to just keep getting depth. I don't care if the quarterback takes off. I've got all these dudes with eyes on him because we're playing zone. We're going to rally and tackle him at 10 yards. That's fine. What you can't do is let a guy get behind you, just sit in the zone, because Missouri's running, Weiss is running a vertical straight down the field. So the middle safety's got to get depth, because if he doesn't, they'll throw it over his head. So there's a pocket between them. And so I think your linebacker just didn't get enough depth. And there really wasn't a big reason to, because he had nothing in front of him, and it's 4th and 17. So, hey, man, get depth. And if you do that, I think the ball's either not thrown or it's intercepted.
Yeah. And JP actually put in the Discord, hey, folks, this is what you get on the Football No Recruiting channel. Like I said, it's pure football strategy talk. And he just replied there. He goes, so it does look like the strong hook, Nunnery, didn't get enough depth. Kind of going what you were just saying there, Seth. He goes, I have to think that the middle of the field safety, Castell, got too much depth there at the same time. So he goes, originally I was frustrated that it didn't have Hill carry the number 2 receiver in the seam, but I think they might have been expecting, here you go, a deep outbreaking concept like Cell or something. So kind of going to what you were talking about. Hill working the outside most wide receiver and getting depth would have put him in perfect position to take that away.
Yeah, and JP shared with me earlier today, I don't know if you follow SEC StatCat.
Yeah.
He's kind of showed where Missouri's kind of hit charts are in the passing game. Yep. They don't throw a lot of 15 to 20-yard balls down the middle of the field that aren't like post shots. So this is not something they run a ton. They run a lot more outbreakers. So with that in mind, you want to make sure you got somebody in the out. But regardless, you've got 4 over 2. You should be in good shape with basically the 2 guys that are underneath are getting underneath the route, and you got 2 guys on top of the route. You're basically bracketing both those 2 routes. You should be in really good shape. Now, is like the perfect call. I may have preferred pressure just to get the ball out of his hands quicker, but it's a call. If you execute it, it works. Like it's not like it's a bad call. So, but that's how it goes.
Sigh, big sigh.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll wrap it up. Florida finished SEC play with their game against Missouri. Of course, one more game left out of conference versus FSU. And I posted this on Twitter yesterday or last night, got pretty good traction on it. And, hey, it's a comparison for Florida in SEC play from last year to this year. And, boy, what a story it tells. So, last year, points per game for the Gator offense, 28.9 in SEC play. it rose to 30.5 there so the offense scoring about a couple points more a game there this year. Yards per game, about the same, 423.5 last year, 422 this year. And then, here's the ugly one. Hey, how many years in a row have we said it can't get any worse on defense? And somehow it finds a way to get worse. Defense points per game last year, 28.6. This year, 5 more at 33.6. And you can see why. Defensive yards per game last year in SEC play, 404.3. This year, 471.3. Oof. Ouch. Not many ways around that one. I mean, it's a 67-yard difference there for yardage from last year's defense to this year's. And Seth, it doesn't paint a pretty picture for this Gator defense. Ever since 2020, it's just been a side of the ball that you cannot count on. No matter how good the offense is, they have to make up for a pretty bad defense. And this year, it just kind of crept up again for Florida. And hey, look, I mean, defensive points per game last year, 28.6. This year, 33.6. If you just duplicated last year and the turnovers that defense last year created, you might have 2 more wins. That's how it may look small in some ways, but given the margin for error that we just talked about for this Gator team, even last year's defense maybe gets them a couple more wins.
Yeah, and I think the biggest part of that is it's strange to look at, really, because you look at they've gotten better at a couple places, like success rate, really good. But I saw you shared a tweet, somebody shared with you that basically when Florida gives up a successful play, it is insanely successful. It is, and that's kind of where the explosives come in. Like the EPA numbers are terrible, but the success rate numbers are good. So you get like 2 good plays in a row or a couple of good drives in a row, and then bang, you're giving up a huge explosive, and that just kind of skews everything. And that's kind of been the big issue this year is you are really bad at giving up explosive plays. I think a lot of that comes down to kind of your back end, your kind of youth on your back end a little bit, and not being able to generate a pass rush up front, really. And then not turning. That's the other thing. When you turn people over, you get the ball a lot more. They get the ball a lot less.
Yes, right.
So people are having the ball a lot more this year than they did last year. So that can contribute to those yardage numbers going up too.
Good point.
Yeah. But I was looking at something because it's something I noticed in the Kentucky game. Kentucky really attacked the edges of this defense, like to the tackle and outside in the run game. And then you see a couple weeks later, South Carolina is trying to do the same thing. And then Georgia is doing the same thing. And then Arkansas is trying the same thing, LSU. So I went and looked, and they're giving up on runs, just designed runs, not quarterback runs, not anything like that. Outside the tackle, they're giving up almost 7 yards a carry. Inside the tackle, it's 4.5. So they're just – I think a lot of that is you're having to have safeties fitting downhill, and we're seeing that in the passing game as well. Short passes, like – I think they may have played a little bit more zone last year, but you play zone this year, ball gets thrown in front of you. Just think of Arkansas game, LSU game, first third down to the LSU game. Play zone, the ball gets thrown in front of you. You make a tackle, it's maybe a first down, maybe a yard short. You miss the tackle, it becomes like a 40-yard play. So it's just a lot of compounding issues, and you don't have the high upside with the turnovers either. So yeah, you're just having to kind of sit and take your medicine for the most part.
Yeah, so that Florida State, one of the most explosive offenses in the country. Of course, that was with Jordan Travis, so we'll see how that translates for Florida. But, I mean, with the way this team is just giving up explosives, it almost is – and kind of going to your point, because of a lot of reasons to some of the explosives, like the missed tackles, okay, it doesn't really matter who the quarterback is. If the quarterback gets the ball to a playmaker – like Rodemaker probably can a bit, and given FSU's playmakers, okay, you still got to go make a play, no matter who the quarterback is. If the ball is in a skilled player's hands, you have a chance to make a tackle. You got one more game to maybe just flip a switch.
And let me tell you, they're going to run a lot of counter, and they're going to run a lot of runs outside the tackle. That's kind of their bread and butter in the run games. They're really good at that. Now, it doesn't have the element of Travis keeping it as much, but that's going to be a big part of their game. So you're going to have to be able to take on those blocks on the outside, and they're going to attack your edges in the run game. So, what's interesting is I hear Florida State people talking about the game, and they were kind of worried how they're going to do up the middle. I think their center got hurt as well in the last game. So, maybe you can get some push on the interior, but I'd imagine it's going to be a lot of those. Hey, we're gonna take the ball outside and make your safeties come up and tackle. And if you get your best game of the year in the tackling front, maybe you're in really good shape. If you don't, it's pretty much the same thing. So yeah, I just looked it up. Last year, Florida was 100th in success rate. This year, they are 39th, but they're worse in EPA giving up. So that's those explosive plays, man.
Dang. All right, man. Seth, you got your film review up yet, or
not yet?
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I put a lot of time, not a lot of time, but I recorded for about an hour on the Arkansas game a couple weeks ago and had nobody watch. So I'm trying to readjust my strategies here to see what would be fun. So I may I'm probably going to try to find some Max Brown stuff and see. We'll talk about Max a little bit later this week, what he's done this year. Maybe look at the spring game. I think I still got it. So look at what he did there and maybe what kind of schemes we might see from Florida in this Florida State game. That'll probably be coming out next day or two. But
maybe even highlight that outside FSU run game.
I don't want people to be too depressed before the game starts.
I mean, just show the Kentucky film from Florida. And that's probably all we gotta go by and see there. So hey, Seth, thanks, man. One more time joining us right here on Gators Breakdown, right there on YouTube, Varnadore Films. You can check his work out there. Also, gatorsbreakdown.com as well. You can check out Seth's work. So, all right, that'll do it for this episode of Gators Breakdown. Florida State coverage coming up this week right here. Thanks for Seth for joining us right here. I am the host of Gators Breakdown, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Guys and girls out there, thank you for joining us on this episode of Gators Breakdown.